Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Sales Hacker webinar. We've got a great topic of discussion today, and I think it's extremely relevant for what we're speaking to. So please, thank you all for joining us. You know, we do all of these events for the community and for you guys. So we really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to rock with us and learn and enjoy some of the content that we're bringing your way. What we're speaking about today and why you guys are all here is our title is 100% OTE on target earnings, using your comp plan to hit your number. Who doesn't want to hit their number, right? That's the number one goal as sales reps. We all want to hit our number, not only hit our number, but blow it out of the water, right? So we've got an absolute expert in this space to share his knowledge, his expertise on this exact topic, and we'll dive into it and break it down. So we got tons of content to get through today. So this is a workshop, so we hope we get as much participation and engagement from our audience. So please, any questions you guys have, we're here to answer those and address them. Okay. Now, without further ado, I do want to introduce our panelists today. So today, joining me is Calvin Patterson, Regional Sales Manager at Varicent. Calvin, thank you so much for joining us today and blessing us with your knowledge, your time, and your expertise. And welcome to a Sales Hacker webinar.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Cool. Well, before we dive into it, I do like to get a bit of background on who's hanging with us today. Okay, so Calvin, before we dive into the juice of the conversation, and I pass it over to you, do you mind just giving us a bit of background on yourself, who you are, how you became to where you're at today, just so our audience can get a bit more acquainted?
Yeah. So Calvin Patterson, as Mikey said, Regional Sales Manager here at Varicent. Been at the company for a couple months. I was part of the recent acquisition. Concert Finance was acquired by Varicent back in July. Have about 4 years of SaaS sales experience. Always been a top performer. A couple of those months that fell right below quota, but then followed it up with abolishing quota the quarter a month after that. So excited to jump into how you can understand your comp plan in more detail, as well as not just hit quota, but as Mikey said, overachieve and hopefully blow it out of the water.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Calvin. Super excited to have you and learn from you. Having the experience from starting off your career to where you're at now. I'm sure you've seen it all, and I think it's the topic we're speaking about today about understanding your comp plan and so on does get overlooked a lot of the time, right? So I'm excited to hear what you have to say and learn from you as well, and then I can share some of my experiences too. Okay, so everybody, thank you all so much for joining us. We got a lot of content to get through today, so lock in your seat, get ready, ask your questions. This is the time to get them asked. But without further ado, Calvin, I'll throw it over to you to get her going.
All right. Can we see the screen? We're good.
Good on my end.
Amazing. So as Mikey touched on, we're going to be chatting about 100% of your OTE, so on target earnings and using your comp plan to hit your number. There's a lot in your comp plan that you might be not thinking about. You may not even be getting comp plans and details, but we're going to jump into the T's and C's and understanding your comp plan. And then hopefully we don't put you to sleep in the first half of the webinar, and we'll jump into, again, hitting those numbers and overachieving. So a little bit about Varicent Concert. The big thing on the rep side is we're here to help increase transparency and help you focus on the right behavior. If half your pay, 50% of your pay, right? That's pretty much the standard right now in the market, is around 50% of your pay is variable in sales. A lot of us got into sales to make money, and it's kind of kept us in here. But if you have all of this stress that kind of comes with sales, you really need to be able to make sure that you are making that money. So you need clarity into your pay, understanding how you're going to make that 50% of your pay that's related to variables. And then also, how are you tracking in real time? So something we do is real time calculations, as well as helping you understand those future deals. For SDRs, it might be like a stage 0, being able to see what it's going to be before it turned into a stage 1, how much you might get paid. And then AEs, oh, I have a couple deals in a certain stage. What am I going to get paid if I do end up closing, and what accelerator tier am I going to hit? So jump into some of the agenda about what we're going to cover today. Really, it's about what what you're gonna look out for in your comp plan. There's a lot of details in there. There's legal jargon. You need to be able to see through that and understand what it means. I know when I was a BDR, I definitely did not have somebody helping me out. Maybe didn't even necessarily have a comp plan, and I'm sure plenty of these people on the call might not have received an official comp plan. Mikey, it sounds like you didn't receive official one.
Yep. When I first started out, I was in the same boat, so I totally get it.
So it's really about what to look for in your comp plan, how you utilize some of the language like kickers and spiffs to make more money and not just hit that OTE. And how do you bring up your manager? Well, what does this mean? Asking those questions and really understanding the numbers and how you're going to be able to hit that goal instead of just, here's a goal, now go hit it. And how you're going to be able to prioritize things, right? A company is giving you these set goals for a reason. It's about what the company is focused on revenue-wise and the goals overall for the future, right? Sales is the revenue engine that drives the company overall. So we do have a question for you.
Ooh, sweet. Okay, I will. We got a poll for you guys. We just want to get. We have a couple polls throughout the conversation today that we're just going to get a bit of insight from the audience, just so we can get a feel and of where everybody's at with certain things. So we got a quick question here. So, do you have your new plan docs yet? I'm going to launch the poll right now, just so we can see where people are. Oh, everyone's coming in. This is good. It looks like it's looking pretty 50-50 split almost. Okay, I'll just give it a few more seconds here before we dive into it. I think almost everybody has gone.
I certainly hope we're getting some more yeses right now. Couple more.
I'll share the results shortly here.
I mean, we're like as you said, we're almost halfway through that Q1.
I know, right? Okay, I'm going to just end it here and share those results. So 65%, 64% said yes, but there is a good chunk that say no, right? So
yikes.
Interesting. What are your thoughts on that, Calvin?
As I kind of started to allude to, if you're in that 36%, hopefully you're going to get comp plan at some point that's really written out for you. If not, I would definitely bring that up to your manager and have that conversation. As we touched on, 50% of your pay, it's a lot of money to be very ambiguous of how you're going to get that.
Totally. Yeah. Well, I had mine back January 1. So I'll be on the yes stage. So at least that's good. But I totally agree with Calvin there. If it is moving quickly in the year, and you want to make sure that's all locked in, so there is no uncertainty moving forward, so you can start planning it out, right? So if you haven't had the conversation yet, get going.
Go talk to your managers. Go talk to HR. Make sure it happens.
There you go. Awesome. Okay, I'll let you continue on there, Calvin.
All right. Does not want to go. There we go. Okay. So the fun nitty gritty of comp plans and terminology. So what should a comp plan agreement include? Uh, it must be a written agreement that is signed by both the company and the employee. So it cannot just be a verbal agreement. That's not a comp plan. um, some of these, I think it was like what 36% didn't have it. Yeah, that verbal agreement that you might have got. Any company's not necessarily that's up in the air, and there are some legal responsibilities that it's key to understand that what state you're in, there's different legalities too that you might actually be required, the company might be required to continuously pay you on your old comp plan until you receive the new comp plan. But there's lots of nuances there, and just being aware of where you sit and how that's going to affect you, because continuing to work and not being sure how you're going to get paid is it's not fun for anyone.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
So,
and moving into the next slide before we do, when compensation's happening, or when you're dealing out with the compensation plan, there are multiple ways of looking at how you're going to get comped, right? So I would love to hear, as we move on, what are those different ways of being comped when a deal is closed, or what that looks like from your end.
Yeah, before we jump into that, again, I want to say that, look, this is not like the company. You just need to understand that comp is complicated and there's a lot involved in it, and the company's not necessarily out to get you if they haven't given you this comp plan, right? Like, there's people, unless you're at a very large organization, there's not necessarily somebody whose dedicated job is sales compensation, and it might be a finance or rev ops person or your VP of sales who has a lot on their plate, and they're focused on a lot of other things outside of just comp. But for you, understanding that this is the most important thing to you, but they have so much else they're worried about, and it's really complicated. So just being aware about that, and being willing to have the conversation of when is this coming, and trying to have clarity. And jumping into the next slide that we were kind of talking about, yeah, there's lots of different ways companies you can get credit in terms of what the quota metric is, how often is it being measured, and when you're going to be getting paid. So let's jump into one of the key differences that we see that is really, really important to understand when you're going to get paid. So in here, there's two like key things that you need to understand is the credit and the earning. So the credit is like when you're doing the set behavior. And for a lot of people on this call, we see a lot of companies are going to be paying the credit and the earning at the same time. But there's plenty of companies still out there, and maybe, say 40, 50% of the companies are still paying based on the collections or maybe like an invoice basis. So your credit and earning may be very different. So you may get credit for an SDR, like the meeting happens, or it moved from a stage 0 to a stage 1, or you close the deal on the AE side. That's when you get credit. But that doesn't mean that you have earned it yet. It might be that, as I said, the bookings or billing, like when that's going to happen, is the trigger that then says you've earned that money and it's required to be paid from payroll. Usually we see that that's on like a 30-day mark. And again, as I kind of said before, there's different legalities for different states, and just being aware of what that is for where you're located at.
Got it.
So I have another slide that kind of explains that a little bit in more detail. So crediting, again, is going to be your base payout rate. So maybe you close a 100K deal and you have a 10% rate. Okay, you're going to get 10,000, or for the sake, we have 1,000 on this slide. But if you have a collections component, or say your company is really focused on that annual recurring revenue, but you have a smaller company and you negotiated terms, and now they're paying on quarterly terms. So they have 4 different installments, and your plan says, I'm paid on that collections aspect. That would mean that, look, you close the deal, but there's still 3 other payments that need to happen. So you don't have the earnings of the others until they pay that next installment.
Okay, so for my understanding, so crediting means you've made the deal and you get paid right then. However, it actually hasn't gone into fruition yet, essentially, or you haven't collected the actual money from the prospect or the client that you bought from. Whereas earning is you get paid once that money comes in or invoiced and paid.
Correct. Yeah. So it's being able to understand your plan and what that plan outlines and states.
Got it.
The key thing here is, we work with a little bit of companies. Nice plug for Varicent. We help companies with designing better comp plans, and one of the best practices we recommend is you want to get close to real time as possible. So when a deal is closed, you want that rep to get paid out as quick as possible too, because their focus is actually on closing the deal, and anything after that's not what their job is. They're not focused on anything else. So you want to create that reward based system. As soon as they do that behavior, they're going to get paid, and we'll jump into that a little bit more about the psychology of it a little bit later. Come on, let's click. All right, the next thing is another complicated aspect. I didn't necessarily have this in my first comp plan, and it's something that if it's not explained to you well, you really might not know what this means. So understanding that there could be different tiers to your plan. So it might be just based on achievement tier. So it could be based on percent overall of the goal. So there might be a tier at 50%. That's where the base starts. And then you might have another one at 75. There might be one at 100, 120, and then maybe 150. We say kind of best practices 2 below, because you want to give those people who aren't hitting quota something to kind of push themselves for, and then 2 above to give even those top performers to keep reaching for something. The multiplier is, again, you might be that 1x at 100%, but then you hit 110%. Now it might be you get paid 130% on that quota. And then the quota period, of course, is how you're when your quota is measured. So we see there's so much variety there. So sometimes you could have monthly, you could have quarterly, semi-annual, or annual. Our best recommendation, we'll jump into that too a little bit more about the psychology of quota periods, but it's all about creating it as short as possible. As I said before, related to that behavior, let's get it as close to monthly or maybe quarterly for your team. So understanding when you're being measured is really key. So how can you pull in a deal to get that accelerator in that month or that quarter instead of just, I'm just going to close deals whenever. That's how you accelerate your payment to get that overachievement and not necessarily hit that 100%. Come on, slides. There we go. All right. So next we're going to jump into kickers. So again, this is a lot of times we see for companies that they might be focused on right now, they want to retain customers. Retention is really key for them. So they might be highly incentivizing a 2 or 3 year contract. So understanding that you might get paid like an extra 15% or whatever it may be on that deal, and that can be really significant in closing those 2 or 3 years instead of just an annual number. And again, you really want to have that tracking real time with a solution like Varicent in place. But if you don't have that in place, is being able to understand and have that on the side for yourself. And then Spiff, we see a lot of times these are run on a end of the month, end of the quarter, because the company has a goal that they might be falling a little bit short on, so they want to incentivize you to give a little bit more money And I'll jump into a little bit more spiffs on the next slide. Also, sometimes we see spiffs might be run for a new product. A company has this core offering that they have, but now they introduce something new, and they don't really know how it's going to play out in the market. So they want to incentivize reps for trying to sell that. The big thing to think about there, though, is how attainable is closing those deals for this new product offering that might be out there. Sometimes it can be really distracting, like that payout where you, oh my god, I get so much more money if I close this new product offering. But it's about still focusing on the right behavior, which you've done previously in the past to be able to hit your quota, and then thinking about this as kind of the icing on the cake, or the cherry on top. Really, it's going to be the thing that pushes you even further, but should not be your main focus. As this kind of slide says, don't let it distract you. Focus on the main behaviors to hit your goal, and think of this as a little bit extra.
Hey, Calvin, before you move on, I've got a question for you. In terms of spiffs, I think they're really interesting. I've actually never really used them before, but do you have any ideas or examples of when you've used a spiff in the past, or your manager has incentivized you to use a spiff, where it was very quite successful with adopting the piece that you were trying to sell?
Yeah, even right now we have a new product, so offering that spiff to close the new product. Seen sometimes too where there's a spiff related to, maybe there's a gap in the company overall. The company might be doing well in closing deals, but they see the future. So they might be thinking the next quarter out, okay, we're on track for the number right now, but there's a huge gap in future pipeline of deals that are set to close in, like right now we're in Q1. We might not see pipeline for Q2. So companies might introduce now halfway through Q1, okay, if you are able to produce X amount of pipeline, we're going to give you, they might give you a one-time payment, or it could be X% too.
Cool. Love it.
So we do have another diving deeper into the T's and C's. I promise we won't put you to sleep. We're almost into the more interesting stuff about, how do you really think about the numbers in your comp plan outside of just the words. So last slide, really talking about some more of the wording related to the comp plan, is thinking about the terms and conditions related to extraordinary cases. So these can be really key too, is thinking about the clawback. So being able to understand, you might not be getting paid on collections, but there could be something written in the plan that if a company doesn't pay within X period of time, you might that might be clawed back from you. You might lose that commission, which is not fun to have. Saw one of those recently, and not fun, Mikey. Let me tell you.
Hey, from experience, it's not fun. So
No, definitely.
I get it.
Yeah, so you really need to understand when that's going to happen and try and avoid at all costs for that. Uh, windfall deals is really significant, large, unexpected deals. Bluebirds could be huge deals as well, though. But like these could be deals that you might be capped on a certain amount. So you might have an uncapped commission, but there could be something saying too that if a deal is over X amount, you're kind of capped on. It might be a standard is 10%, so you might get capped on. Oh, if you close $1 million deal, which might not be your standard, maybe we cap you at 15%, and you're not going to hit those extreme accelerator tiers that exist overall on the plan. And then family leave, understanding what kind of happens related to unexpected circumstances, family matters, birth, child, and if somebody gets really sick too. Hopefully none of that happens for anybody on this call, but just being aware of what's written in the comp plan, and legally you're responsible to know, and the company is going to hold you to that.
Love it. Awesome. Okay, we're going to hop into another poll to get a bit more of a feel for the crowd. Okay. And we want to know, because I feel like there's quite a few managers out there that might not talk to their reps about their comp plan. So we want to know how you guys fall within this. So does your manager talk to you about your comp? Okay, I'm just going to launch it here quickly, and we'll give it a minute or so to get some responses. How often are you talking to your reps and your teams about comp, Calvin?
I talked to my manager, when the comp plan came out, breaking it down.
Yeah,
for sure. And I think it's really important to stay like actively knowing throughout the quarter, every month, how you're tracking and pacing for that comp.
yeah.
Not just about closing your deals. You need to think about how much you're making when it's half your pay.
Totally, right? It's quite important. Okay, guys. Well, we almost have everybody in here. Okay. Give it a couple more seconds, and then we'll end this one. Okay, I'll share the results here. So, at least we have a good chunk saying they talk regularly every quarter. Great. Only if I'm not hitting quota, never. There are a few people out there that are saying that. What are your thoughts on that, Calvin?
I would say be aggressive in reaching out to your manager and talking to them about that. You want to be proactive, and you really want to understand, like we talked about, those accelerator tiers, and so much of your pay is that variable. You need to really understand how you can achieve it and push yourself to make that goal. Nobody wants to hit 50% of their goal. You didn't come in to join the company for that OTE and only hit half of it.
Totally, and I completely agree. I talk to my leadership all the time about comp, especially every quarter, because on my end, commissions come every quarter, and if I'm blowing it out of the water, I want to know what's working, and maybe down the road what we can change to increase that, right? So I think it's extremely important to talk regularly with it, and make it almost don't make it a conversation that can be intimidating. Make it normal, make it feel like we want our sales reps to blow their comp out of the water, right? So start having that conversation. I think it'll do wonders for yourself and the rest of your team.
Yeah, reach out.
Exactly.
So the big thing is here, don't assume you're being screwed. Okay, you just got a new comp plan, new year. The big thing is understanding, look, the company might have a different focus, as we were talking about the new product offering, or might be focused a little bit more on retention, where now there's a big accelerator that you get if you close these multi-year deals. So being aware of what that is in your comp plan and how you're going to utilize that to your advantage, and knowing that just because this comp plan, like, do the math on your own, but also have that conversation with your manager. It might seem like, this is insane, I don't know where these numbers are coming from, but right now you might be on a 2-to-1 ratio, like one SDR to 2 AEs. It might be transitioning that you might have a 1-to-1 ratio. So you might have more support, or there could be a huge hiring on the marketing side, and a lot of ad spend, or we're going to buy maybe more technology. That's why, if the numbers seem a little extreme to you, just dive into that with your manager. Don't be afraid to ask those questions, and come with understanding the math that you've done, but the company is probably not out to get you. The company has a reason why they've made these changes to the plan. Shout out to Varicent. We might help with that transparency and showing reps how you would have hit with these new changes on the comp plan. We can show, based on your past performance, what you would make. But being able to understand that is really, really key, and not just, okay, I have this comp plan, I got to accept it. The math might not work out, and it might be, hey, we're in this great resignation. The math might not work out, and you might be like, oh, okay, this plan is a little crazy, and it might be time to leave. But chances are that's not the case, and just work it out with your manager to understand how attainable this goal is.
Hey, Calvin, I'm going to stop you right there and interrupt. I got a question from the audience asking, in your opinion, at what point in the year should you start to be concerned if you haven't received the comp plan?
Now,
think
a lot of
as soon as pretty much as soon as possible.
yeah. So really, based on a former slide too, it shows that before you even go into this new plan, you should have that transparency into your new plan, and how, like, again, starting Jan 1, if that's your new year, you need to understand how you're getting paid as of Jan 1. But that doesn't necessarily happen with every company. Like you just said, Mikey, you got your comp plan on Feb 1, and that might happen, but now we're almost halfway through February. It might not happen on January 1st, but ideally it happens somewhere in January. But now you're in February. Now you're like, okay, I've been in my seat for 6 weeks that I don't really know how I'm getting paid. And as we touched on before too, is, well, something could have changed significantly in your plan that you might have a different accelerator, whether that be a quarterly or monthly, that, look, if you can pull this deal in to this quarter, you might get paid a lot more, and you need to understand how that could happen, rather than just, it might not change that much either. So there might not be that much concern, but I would definitely bring that up and try to say, look, I don't understand. I've been working for 6 weeks. I need to know how I'm getting paid.
Yeah, agreed. And for those whose fiscal year don't start on Jan 1, ideally, you know how you're going to get paid before the start of your fiscal year, so you can hit the ground running.
Yeah. So jumping into the next thing too is, start asking those questions about your comp. Look, managers, a lot of times we see that aren't necessarily breaking it down for reps. You need to think about, as I said, is this is the right fit for you or not, and ask those questions. Make sure you're having that with your manager, and understanding, is this OT attainable? Can I overachieve, or is this kind of just out of nowhere? So now we're about halfway through. We're going to jump into the fun stuff, from my opinion. We're going to jump into some more of the numbers, which is how you don't just hit those goals, but you overachieve. So we like to call this internally the blueprint to quota. And this is going to remove the ambiguity of what needs to be done when to hit quota. That's a tough one, Mikey. Don't laugh.
Hey, I would have done the same.
So you need to work backwards from your goal, not just like, here's this huge goal to hit for the year. It's breaking down the different time periods to understand your process and how typically deals move throughout the process. So here we have a set period, that March to April. Look, this is how many deals you might need to then hit your goal, and being able to work backwards. So we can pass along, we have a spreadsheet that really helps with the blueprint to quota. This is how I've been able to overachieve, is always understanding, one, what's the standard, and this is going to help you understand the comp plan too, is, look, this is how you understand how achievable your goal is, by having these numbers and what the conversion rate is from one step to the next. And again, as we said, if your manager's not reviewing this with you, you need to bring it up, and you need to have that conversation. And great, we're talking about the numbers. Well, there is psychology into the goals and focusing on what's right now, but it's just why we've broken it down into smaller goals. And then we get to the big goal overall by thinking and breaking it down into smaller ones.
I like that. That's great.
So a nice emphasis here on this next slide is, don't think about that overall goal. Think about this set month right here, or 3 weeks, and focus on what you can do in this set time to hit that top of funnel, right? That top of funnel is what the source of all deals and all pipeline is. Top of funnel. Without that, you're not going to be able to close anything. And really, going into next, it's really about understanding your specific numbers, and not just the overall company. You need to understand that it's about what your quota is, plugging in your numbers, and not just leaving it high level. So you can use these numbers and individualize it to yourself. Don't just use a standardization from everybody in the company. Then you're going to break down. So before, the last slide was about the quota and the average sales price, which are really key. And then next, you need to think about even more so the stages within your pipeline and how you're going to be able to move from one stage to the next, and knowing those conversion rates, not like knowing, hey, this is the company standard and how you compare against that standard, but knowing what it is specifically for yourself. You might have a better close ratio than Susie on your team, but maybe you're not that person, or maybe Bobby has just a lower close ratio, but he's insane at building pipeline. So understanding what your strengths are and being able to change the numbers based on what works best for you.
Hey, Calvin, I got a question. How have you seen in your time any colleagues that you've worked with, peers or anything like that? How often have you seen that their conversion rates, or what they think is going to go, is actually accurate, or move to the next stage, right? Because I feel like there's so many people that, yeah, this is definitely going to happen, this is going to happen, this is going to happen, and then it doesn't. Do you see that often with other reps throughout your career, or typically is it more they're typically more accurate?
I mean, I would say a lot of people aren't accurate. I think even myself, we all tend to be like a little bit maybe overly optimistic of, I'm going to close all these deals. Especially early in your career, I'd say this is even more important to really understand these numbers. I know I used to get happy years, and I'm sure sometimes still even do, is you over project. Oh, they said this one thing. Make sure these numbers are realistic and that you're setting yourself up for success. And if the more realistic you make them, the more you're going to be able to hit them, but not just hit them, but over exceed. If you set them too low, you're not setting yourself up for success.
Totally. And then you can also, by doing that, you can manage expectations with your leadership and so on, being like, hey, this is actually going to happen, right? Because I know that, from experience, right? So awesome. Thanks, Calvin.
Yeah. And as we were just touching on too, in this next slide, we say, like, look, you got to be honest about your performance. Maybe you got lucky with that really massive deal. I know at one of my past companies, we had somebody that just closed this behemoth deal that was nowhere near the ASP of what typically happened. And this rep made a ton of money on that deal, but thinking about that, because it's all about creating that repeatable process to make sure you're putting yourself in that position to hit that goal and overachieve, right? Like, I always like to say, okay, let me put myself in the position to maybe have these small to mid-sized deals, and I want to have a one deal every quarter, or maybe it depends on how you're measured. But for me, I'm trying to say, okay, let me have one deal every quarter that is tracking, that's a much larger deal that doesn't put me at quota, but it way blows me out of the water. But it's these other deals that I think I have the deal velocity to be able to just close consistently.
Totally. And I totally agree with that. Like, some people can get so lost in that big, that behemoth, and spend all their time on that. And then ultimately it doesn't go. And then, there's a waste of a quarter and you didn't even hit it. Right. So I always say having, keeping the pipeline that continuously, like you said, the repeatable process that comes through, having those going, but then also focusing on the other ones. So if that does go through, you look like an absolute rock star. If it doesn't, then you still have the backups to hit your quota moving forward, right?
Yeah, I think it's just being realistic, right? Like we said, that one large deal, or maybe it's not a large deal, but maybe it's a deal that just moved very quickly.
Yeah.
If you didn't have this super quick moving deal, would you have been able to hit your number? Maybe not. So you need to think about that. Like, I actually wasn't set up for success in this quarter, and I just happened, thankfully for that one deal, but be aware that might not happen next quarter or next half, and that means you probably just need a bigger pipeline.
Yeah. Love it. Okay, so we got one last poll for everybody. And we just want to know a bit more about when you get commission reporting. Okay. So I'm just going to launch it here quickly, give it a 30 seconds to a minute or so. For myself, I get reporting every quarter. I also track it, on my own, right? So so I can make sure that I am accurate with everything else, right?
Sounds like you guys need some Varicent over there, Mikey.
Maybe, we might. I'm open to it. But what about yourself, Calvin?
Yeah, I mean, we have real-time reporting. Like that's the key, right? That we're talking about is all the time being able to understand how you're tracking throughout every. I mean, it doesn't have to be necessarily real time, but it's as close as real time as possible. Daily would be ideal, right? When you close the deal, and as we talked about too before, like Varicent also offers pipeline, so being able to see deals before you even close them, so you eliminate those questions and bring them up right away, so you're not well, especially when you're talking about so much of your pay, you need to understand budgeting for yourself. Maybe you're trying to buy a house, but if you don't have that real time pay, you don't know like what you're going to end up making, and then all of a sudden you see this magical amount appear in your bank account.
Yeah. Okay, I'm just going to end it here. Share the results. So the majority are on similar to what I'm doing every quarter, right? But we do have a good chunk in real time. And then after my commissions are in my bank account, I don't get reporting.
Poor people.
So maybe
reach out to Varicent.
Shameless plug. Awesome. So okay, thanks guys. Thanks for joining in on those. Just really good to get an understanding of who's with us and where they fall in with it. But like Calvin said, I'm sure we all want to move towards that real time because one, it gives you that kind of instant verification and boost of confidence too, right? So love it there.
Yeah, and the next thing as we're talking about is related to real time is there's a lot of psychology behind it too, and it's not just being able to see that payment, it's about driving yourself towards that goal. And then what is commission? Let's jump into it. My lights just went off and luckily you didn't see that. So
you're all good.
Commissions are a reward-based learning feedback loop. So there's three things that kind of make that up. Is the quota, so that's like your goal of like what you're gonna achieve and try and get to. The next is, so that's like the target. Then you got the behavior. Is what am I gonna do to hit that goal? What are the deals I have to close? How am I gonna get that pipeline and create the right behavior to hit that? And then the last is the rewards. So when you start to get that reward of a nice commission, it gets reinforced and, oh wow, this behavior worked. And then you just create this repeatable process of, I was successful here, now I'm going to do that process again because I got paid. So swear, Mikey, these slides, just look at, can you see this?
There you go.
There we go. It clicked. It was like half switched.
Yeah.
All right. So as we were talking about too, real-time reporting is key. It's not hard or expensive. You can create your own spreadsheet. We encourage you to do that on the side if your company has not created one, or even ask your team, oh, do you happen to have some calculations that then you can plug your own deals in and hold the company accountable, right? So ask for that real-time reporting, create that side spreadsheet so you know on your own how you're tracking. And here's some of the satisfaction scores from our benchmark report we did. So for those leaders out there on this call, webinar, know that real-time makes AEs more satisfied, which makes them more likely to kind of stick around. And those annual reps, they are not satisfied with that payment at all. They're not satisfied with that reporting for an annual. So let's get it close to that real time for everybody out there.
Yeah, I could see the annual being quite tough.
So you got to monitor, as we said, monitor on your your own. We have a cringe-worthy story that a rep, a company we onboarded, and we're bringing on the historical data. The rep didn't realize he was missing $50,000. $50,000. That's insane. So you need to make sure that you're tracking that on the side, uh, and that your company is providing you some information and statements too. So at 10 to 20%, if you're not receiving anything, push your leadership to get those statements and not just, oh, it magically appeared in my bank account.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wow, $50,000.
That's a lot, right?
So that can be it's a lot.
Yeah. So the next thing is, as we're diving deeper into the psychology too, is if you find your quota is just demotivating and you need to break it down, you have to re-engage yourself to get motivated, and you need to break it down with a control level theory, and it's about working backwards and setting achievable targets, because when you set achievable targets, you actually have this dopamine rush when you're, doesn't matter if you hit that goal, it's if you're pacing towards that goal. And this is why real time matters, is if you think you're pacing towards that goal, it's similar to really even hitting that goal. It's the same dopamine trigger. And when you feel like it's more achievable, you're going to have that spike. So really set those achievable targets for the team. And again, breaking it down yourself, when we're going to talk about how you can break it down if your company hasn't. And there's this psychological theory called control level theory, and there's 4 different dimensions that make that up. So we're going to jump into that. So there's 4, which is social, experiential, temporal, and spatial. So if you have like a huge $1.5 million, $1 million quota at the year, it's about breaking it down into smaller things using these 4 different dimensions. So social distance, we're all on teams. We got other coworkers. So thinking about where those top performers are hitting and measuring yourself up against them. And if targets have more meaning when everybody else is kind of around that goal, so make sure you're just finding a buddy and comparing yourself to that top performer, and that's how you're going to make sure you're pacing to be able to hit those goals. Did you have somebody at your first when you were back in the day? Was it Joe?
So I'm very competitive, right? Growing up playing sports my whole life, and then moving into a world of sales, is yes, I certainly did. I won't name names, but John Doe, back at my first year as an SDR, we would go head to head every month, and it was fun. It was fun. We were still great friends, and very the camaraderie was great. But we always pushed each other to reach our goals, and everything was possible when you're getting pushed, right? So I certainly did. I think it's great to have too.
Yeah, it helps you push to that next level and understand, okay, you're on track and not just I don't know how I'm pacing. If John Doe is always pacing the quota and I'm comparing myself to them, okay, I'm probably pacing to goal too. Especially key for the younger reps too.
Yeah, agreed.
So the next is going to be experiential distance. So it's moving targets closer to have a progression towards that goal. Again, we're focusing about breaking down the goal, not just this massive target that we're not sure how we're going to get there. And do you understand what it takes to get to that? So the Olympics are recently going on, and the skiers, they need to think about, when I'm going down the slope, what are the steps I have to take to get all the way down and be successful? And so you need to set smaller goals of, okay, well, here's the first group of skis, what I'm going to have to do, and doing that for yourself. When you think about this overall goal, is breaking it down into smaller targets and these little tiers for yourself. So we recommend 4 tiers for companies, but you might not have that in your plan, but you can do it for yourself and set those smaller targets. If you have a $100,000 quota every quarter, think about, let's try and close the 33K, right? 33K every month instead of just, oh, I got to close this quarterly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The next is going to be that the temporal, which is, as I was kind of talking about too, is breaking it down instead of quarterly. Let's think about monthly. So here's some stats that too is, companies that have reps that are on that annual plan versus monthly, you can see there's a pretty significant difference. So SDRs on an annual plan have about like a 13% lower achievement than SDRs on a monthly plan. And then for the AEs on the monthly plan are again performing much higher than those reps on the annual plan. It's like 14% right there or 24%. That's significant, right? Like that's when you, again, breaking down into smaller goals for yourself to make it more digestible.
Yeah.
Oh, it just went, I swear, it's delayed. Okay. Hopefully it doesn't skip through again. There we go.
Now we're talking.
All right. And so lastly is the spatial distance. So lower targets do not necessarily mean like lower performance. So when you think about pricing of cars or houses, you think about where if you set it at like $100,000 versus like $90,000, it sounds like so much more attainable. And here you can even see like there's a 50K number versus a 42. Even though it's not that much lower, it just seems so much more attainable compared to where you were at. Right? If you're only at 30 and you're like, oh, I can get to 40 versus 50, oof, wow, that 50 just sounds so crazy. And so here's some of the numbers that we saw when companies actually end up lowering that number, and they perceived it as just more attainable, right? So make sure you're setting those intermediate goals and also feel like you're setting it something that you can achieve.
Yeah. And it's kind of like, how I like to look at it. I love this because, when you see what you have to achieve and then you break it down into more digestible goals to hit, it's kind of like when, you look at your to-do list and you have 150 things that you got to get through, and you look at it all as a whole and you're like, oh my God, I don't even know where to start. I don't even know how to do this. What's going to happen? And then once you start kind of ticking it off and just like, I'm going to do these 5 today or XYZ, makes it much more achievable. You get through it much faster. And then you can hit those goals. Right. So, I love the talk there.
Yeah, just like we were talking about too, is like the blueprint to quota. Same thing here is you need to again understand those goals and break it down into smaller things to give yourself that path to hitting your OTE and above. And so overall, you need to make sure you understand your rights. Like you need to get a comp plan. You need to understand how you're going to get paid. And you need to work backwards from that number to figure out how you get to that OTE and can you overachieve and exceed those numbers and not just hit it. Know your numbers, know that contract, what that means for you, and figure out what it's going to take to hit those numbers. We're sales reps who want to make money for sure. And then optimize for those other key things in your plan that you might not be familiar with and used to, those spiffs and kickers that may put you in a completely different ballpark financially that you weren't even thinking is possible.
Yeah, love it. And when to add on to figuring out your quota for all those that are starting out in kind of a selling role, utilize the seniors at your company. Learn from them. Learn how they've done certain things to help them hit their quota. They're the experts. Everybody at Varicent, go talk to Calvin. He'll give you a bunch of tips that will help out. Right. So, love it all.
Yeah, that's a really quality point. It's about your managers, but it's also there might be other reps that have already worked out some of these numbers for themselves. Take advantage of those top performers too. They can be just as helpful as your leadership team.
Fantastic, Calvin. Well, we are at time. That is, I'll let everybody go. I know we're all busy people, but if there are any questions that anybody has still that we didn't get to, please go follow Calvin on LinkedIn. Send him a question I'm sure he'll be more than happy to answer anything. If you have anything from myself or the Varicent team, please reach out. We'll get to them as quickly as we can. But again, Calvin, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day. I know you're very busy, and blessing us with all the info that you gave us today. I learned a ton. I loved it. I loved having you here. And Varicent, thank you so much for sponsoring this event. They're doing amazing things. Go check them out if you haven't already. With that being said, I'll let you go, end the week strong. Calvin, it's been awesome. Thank you so much.